2021. There's no expectation left in terms of who's going to get out.
They are human too. They can bleed, they can lose. If we fight for second place, we want to show ourselves that we can do it.
Let's go! This is the Hanwha Life esports fans we're hoping to see bounce back in a big way.
더 갈수록 성장하고 세지는 팀일 것 같습니다.
For Peace, there is still hope.
Our main targets are here, like the wildcard teams. Against them, we definitely have good chances, and we showcased it against Infinity today as well.
Peace, now will come the cavalry.
We can beat them.
This is it here for Red Canids.
We are a better team than Peace and Infinity.
We gave them reasons to doubt us. Hopefully, can shut them up tomorrow.
Unipod's still not dead, and that means the rest of the enemies are.
ですね、まあでも2勝1敗でも正直まだまだ3位、4位の可能性もありますし、BO5 2回しないといけない可能性もあるんで、気を引き締めてやっていきたいと思います。
Beyond, I think, have leveled up a lot in the short amount of time they've had.
就恭喜你们猜错了，我们会进入小组赛。
Cloud9 are just rampaging through this game.
We're the best team in our group.
Undefeated so far at World.
As long as we win our next game, we're guaranteed to be first seed.
It's not over yet. We still have a big chance.
This is it. Make or break.
We will make it, and I hope they see.
It all leads to this. Make or break.
Vitality will take them!
A new era is awaiting. Make it yours.
Welcome back, everyone, to Worlds 2021 in Reykjavik, Iceland. Here we see the undefeated LNG and Infinity Esports, their opponents in the first game, arriving at the arena for our first battle of the day. With only 4 matches left in the single round robin, today will show us which teams will take their next step on the hero's journey here at Worlds. I'm Shox, and I am joined once again by Emily and Chronicler. I was off the show, as we all were yesterday, and I needed my fix or make or break, so I'm happy that we're back. You know, got to up on that dose, right?
Yeah, the dream team is back together.
Yes, here we
Make or
are.
break.
A lot happened yesterday, so let's get a little refresher on our standings. In Group B, Cloud9, they continued their day one dominance, though the LGL's Detonation Focus Me trailed just behind them in second. And on the other side, LNG maintained their perfect record to lead Group A with Hanwha Life Esports hot on their trail. Chronicler, talk to me about Hanwha Life, who started off slow versus LNG, but now have racked up 3 wins.
I think what we've seen from Hanwha Life thus far was pretty much in line with people who've watched them all summer kind of expected. If you've just watched their Gauntlet run, you might feel like they're underperforming, but this is pretty similar to what we've seen of them throughout the entirety of the split. There's a lot of individual highlights, but then, you know, sometimes Deft gets caught for no reason. He's been doing that for a while and shows no sign of stopping down. Sometimes the synergy isn't quite there, but individually these players are still strong enough that they were able to secure a comfortable 3-1 scoreline.
Yeah, I think I fully agree. I think what we've seen from them in the play-in stage thus far is pretty much what I expected. Day one, I was actually a little bit more impressed with how they played, especially against LNG, despite the loss. And then yesterday, I think we saw a little bit more of their foibles, some of their communication errors. But again, they are individually strong players, as Chronicler already said. So I think that will be more than enough to carry them to the group stage.
Yes, we'll talk later about if they do get it to the best of fives, what the options are there. Now, Cloud9, they have looked fantastic so far. I think some people will say, oh, sometimes they drop the kill when they shouldn't have. But honestly, when you look at the whole performance overall, it's been great. They are undefeated and they are on course to make it to groups, Emily.
Yeah, so the big thing for me is that the top side is communicating really well, right? Because we talked about their MSI performance and how a lot of it came down to having strong individuals, but they weren't necessarily on the right timings. And that was something that kind of characterized them throughout summer as well. Perks, Blabber, and Fudge are playing so well together, especially with how Fudge is setting up waves in topside. And the coolest thing about yesterday is that they showed us a lot of different looks in their drafts still with that strong communication. So even when they did make some mistakes, which they definitely did, they were able to regroup no problem and still have really strong team cohesion.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you can now see, you know what, kind of being at MSI, taking lessons from that, as well as the summer in LCS. Now we're seeing a much more well-rounded team so far. That does mean when we look at Group B, it looks like Cloud9 will snag that first spot away. But who will join them in the top 2? Remember, if you are number 1, you auto-qualify for groups. If you're 2, you have to play on Sunday in only 1 best of 5. So who can get that second spot? Detonation, Focus Me, Galatasaray, or beyond? You can spam in chat, DFM, GS, or BYG, so you can vote at home. Chronicler, who do you think out of those 3 has the best cards to make it to that second spot?
I was excited about them from the get-go, and then they started a little bit slow, but DFM to me have come back nicely from what was a unfortunate game against C9, and I think that they are back at the team that we kind of expected from them, strong individual lanes, and it's also because they're playing against Bill today, and those are still like what feels to me like on their journey to being as good as they were domestically. And that in turn makes me feel very confident that DFM is at the very least going to make it to those best of 5s.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Beyond there, because I think when we're looking at DFM, they're looking exactly kind of how we expected them, even in their losses. However, BYG, in my opinion, are performing a little bit worse than what I saw during their qualification run. I think Husha was such a huge part, and his performance was such a huge part of getting them here. And he has not been performing as well on the international stage thus far. I think their final win was a good like harbinger of what they can do and the team fights that they can pull out and the communication they can have. So hopefully they can keep it up, because I do think they've slightly underperformed compared to expectations based on what we saw, especially in their series against PSG Talon in their playoff run.
Yeah, they really have to hit that ceiling, I think, to make sure that they make it to the groups in some case. But Galatasaray is the last team I want to talk about in this group, because they're not playing today, and we were so excited about them after the first date. And yesterday they dropped 2 games. Emily, what's happened?
So I think in those first 2 games, we were like, oh, wow, you know, this team came out a lot, swinging a lot more in the early game, right? Because previously we talked about their early game. It was a lot through sometimes just being better laners and chilling. Even with scaling comps, they'd still somehow have a lead in the early game. And I think they were tested a lot more yesterday. And we did see that when they are behind, they do struggle a lot more, where previously we gave them a lot of credit for being able to close out games while ahead, and that was something that had improved from their domestic performance. But yesterday we saw them kind of struggle when they were set behind, trying to make plays and find openings from that.
Unfortunately for them, they're not actually directly playing unless they get to play in the tiebreaker for second. But if Detonation Focus Me beat Beyond, then they lock a top 2 spot. So as said, there's a lot up in the air today, but we'll keep you posted in terms of possible tiebreakers. At home, you did vote for Detonation Focus Me to make it through with 86% of the vote. And only 5 for Galatasaray and 7 for Beyond. Oof. I get it, though. After MSI, I guess a lot of people are on the DFM hype train. So let's take a look at the schedule, because today will play out a little bit differently than our previous days. Group A and B will complete their round robins in the 4 matches we have scheduled. And then we will play out any potential tiebreakers after those matches. But have no fear, as always, we'll keep you updated about the tiebreaker scenarios as the day goes on. You know, I'm in it for the long haul. I want the biggest amount of tiebreakers, which is 4, I believe. Chronicler?
Yes.
Yeah.
I've studied up extensively on tiebreakers. We're going to 8 games if everything goes, you know, well or right, depending on your point of view.
Yes, we'll see. In any case, with many teams in very stressful must-win scenarios, we are going to cast our eyes to Game 2 for our featured matchup presented by Mercedes-Benz, Peace versus the Red Canids.
The hopes of both the Brazilian and Oceanic fans rest on Peace and Red Canids Kaluga, with a win for each of these teams bringing them one step closer to groups and eternal glory. Peace struggled against the top dogs of Group A, and now they need to rise in the final hour to stay alive at Worlds 2021. With players like Vizichachi, Babip, and Tally, they have the experience needed to pull off another LCO miracle.
On the top side, not able to survive for long enough. Tally is trying to go 1v5 quite literally. He's got to get one, and now we have the Zaya looking for the turn. Unbelievable Canids right now.
But the Red Canids will be a tough opponent, led by the new superstar from the CB LoL in Grevtar.
The jungler now as they try and go in for the showstopper. Cody not quite able to get the abscond of Duck. These health bars are too low. It's a double kill for Grevtar.
I want to face Doing B. He's my role model. I want to be among the best.
On the last day of the play-ins group stage, these teams are looking to advance to the knockouts and make a statement to the future opponents.
A pivotal matchup ahead in Game 2, but as we prepare for our first game of the day between LNG and Infinity, Emily is going to walk us through some of the strong playmaking that has made LNG a force to be reckoned with in Neighborhood Tactics presented by State Farm. Emily, what are you going to show us?
So I'm going to talk through the really deep TP that Icon has in their game against Red. Red actually got off to a really good early start. They made kills mid and top around the same time at 7 minutes, which actually gave them a lead. LNG were slowly able to get back into this game because Ale was able to catch a ton of waves topside, and they traded better on cross map. The thing I really want to point out is that ward that is closest to you.
Oops.
Thank you. Yes. So this is the word we're going to be looking at. This was actually placed after LNG was able to get a kill onto Titan in the mid lane, and that gave them almost complete bot side control. Here we're going to see Red think that they're going to be able to make a play onto Ala, so they are going to go... Okay, here we go. Yeah, so they're gonna go try to collapse on him. Guigo actually does end up getting this bot tier 1. And what LNG do is they feel like they're gonna be able to collapse on this because of that vision control I talked about previously. So Icon's gonna TP in. They've already started the fight. He's gonna come in, kind of get some last hits on the champions a little bit. This isn't even perfectly executed, but I think it does demonstrate how LNG are able to find a lot of these timing windows in games, and they are going to coordinate well for this collapse. And it's all off of that pressure they were able to get earlier with the deep ward off of cross-map trading on the bottom side of the map, while Red kind of had a poor cross-map on the top side. So for LNG, they aren't the fastest LPL team. They're actually one of the slower teams in the LPL pretty consistently, between 32 and 34 minute average game time. But when it comes to making wins, they will try for these plays, and the most important thing is that they're all coordinated on it.
So you're saying that for LNG, even though they were traditionally a bit slower and their drafts were maybe not always up to Emily's full standard, at least.
I didn't actually like the draft in this game that much, to be quite honest.
Well, he got kills, said, so.
You know what? We'll leave it at that.
All right. But they still have their kind of quintessential, as we walk to the desk, kind of like LPL style, in that they are able to turn around games and pull the trigger to make sure that they get control of the games.
Yeah, and when we're talking about the difference between the two top teams in this group, in LNG and Hanwha, that is what I think sets LNG apart, is the fact that they are able to move as a team. And even if you might not think it's the best idea or the best draft, if they're all on the same page, it usually works out pretty well for them if they can find the right timing window.
Yeah, if the synergy is on point, so is LNG. And LNG, they're readying themselves to take on Infinity, a team that needs to win here or be knocked out of Worlds. Chronicler, it's going to be an uphill battle, it seems like, for Infinity, given what we've seen from them and how strong LNG have looked so far.
Yeah, as Emily already pointed out really nicely, I think the biggest issue, or the things that I'd be most afraid of if you're Infinity coming into this game, is that even if your laning phase works out well, it's not a team like Hanwha where you can expect them to show some slip-ups, or, you know, maybe two people are going to be exposed in the side lane and you can collapse on them and then try and take a really aggressive play. LNG seem like they have the kind of inevitability that really marks great teams, where they're always going to be looking for a way back into the game. So normally against a team that's better than you, I'd say go all in, try to stomp lanes and snowball. But against LNG, that's so hard to do.
I think we're looking at that top lane with the performance that Ale has had so far. Even though I hear when I talk to the LPL casters behind the scenes, like, it's not always like that. He can actually be quite coin flippy.
Yeah, it's funny because previously we're all in the makeup room, and me, Dogda, and Penguin are all like, Ale has had a good performance thus far, but having watched him in LPL, he contests a lot, right? He loves to take these matchups where he feels like he can dominate lane or match, and sometimes it doesn't always work out, but he's looked great thus far in play-ins.
Let's say the coin is still up in the air.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll see what it comes up heads or tails. I do want to talk a little bit about the mid jungle for LNG. I think we talked a lot about Tarzan coming into this with kind of the historical hype he's had, but also his level up in the regionals. And I think the same can go for Icon. He played much better when it came to crunch time in the LPL. What do you think of them at this point in time in play-ins?
Yeah, part of LNG's rise is actually through the LPL is how well Icon was able to absorb pressure in mid. I thought it was a dramatic improvement from Icon's individual performance from spring to summer. And I wouldn't rate his jungle mid synergy with Tarzan the best, but if he is able to absorb pressure, it gives a lot more space for Tarzan, even if he's not necessarily like traditionally, like when you think of mid pressure, like pushing out the wave, like really having strong mid control, even if he's in a losing matchup, if he's able to hold his own and kind of mitigate that pressure, not give up too much, it just gives Tarzan a lot more space. We also saw them swap some, have some similar champion pool things, so that's kind of fun to watch in draft. This is going to be Emily versus LNG draft, like 0.5 out of infinity times. I didn't actually like their draft in this game, and I would have at least preferred those champions to swap because I think Icon is better, again, at absorbing pressure, and we've seen him set up fights really well in the Gragas, and then, Tarzan can just pop off on the Zed. But if they want to flex in drafts, and they always, kind of want to do these funky things in drafts, I think it was a cool look from them.
Yeah, it looks like Chronicler, they're kind of laying the baseline for, listen, if we go further in this tournament, this is the kind of stuff you can expect for us, so always be careful, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, I think that even with how good C9 has been, I'd still put them behind LNG just because of, as already pointed out, it's with LNG, they're bringing so much. They're bringing individual outperformances. Think back to Arle's performances against Hanwha. They're bringing clean macro takeovers where their opponent makes a single mistake and they win the game off of that. Good team fighting, and then you add the flexing to that. It's a really good sign of like how terrifyingly deep the LPL challenge pool is.
Yeah, definitely so. When it comes to LNG as well, you talked about Icon maybe not always being able to outplay his opponent 1v1, but that's also not the identity of LNG, right? Tarzan is very efficient in helping the team, and they're really a cohesive unit. So he's doing what is needed for the team, it looks like.
Yeah, thus far, they've been a cohesive unit. I mean, I think if you're looking at like how do Infinity attack this, I do think they leave a lot of spaces open early, right? So it's just about whether a team can execute in the mid game to be able to really, really clamp down and not allow LNG those windows. So if there's a way in for Infinity, that's it.
Yeah, so let's take a look at it then. Infinity, they're up against it. They need to win. The hopes of Latin America on their shoulders, Chronicler. A little birdie did tell me, well, no, it's actually in the stats information. Bugax does like to flex his Teemo once in a while. I don't necessarily think that is the right course of action here, Chronicler, but where should they target if they want to make this upset win?
That's a very good question, because I don't know if it's the Teemo counter pick. I do think that even with LNG's potential to like flex around, trying to find yourself a couple of good laning matchups that allow you to easily snowball the early game is always going to be, in my opinion, the best way. Maybe try to go for a really aggressive level 1, try to find some champions that can bolster that, and never ever let your foot off the gas pedal. I'd rather see them like throw a big lead than wait around, because I think if you try to play standard against LNG, they're gonna out-rotate you come mid-game.
I think it's a great point.
Yeah, no, I fully agree with that. Like, I don't think, because LNG, again, they are, like I said, a slower team. And I do think they will have the edge against Infinity in terms of cross-map trading mid to late. But if you can just continuously, like, that's also what I'd see. Like, if you're going to go out, like, go out guns blazing, attack them super early, try to find a way that you can get maybe, like, Bugax significantly ahead and then no one can match him in side lanes. Something like that where the discrepancy is so large that Infinity can play around that to close it out.
All right, we've got the game plan. Go out guns blazing or stay in guns blazing, preferably. While LNG, they are a mighty opponent. Infinity Esports, they not only have their own fate, but the hopes of Latin America in their hands. We'll see if they can rise to the challenge as we dive into our first match of the day.